After cleansing and restoring the barriers where Karakura Town was temporarily swapped with the Soul Society, Rangiku Matsumoto and Nanao Issei enter the Dangai to return home, but are confronted by something along the way. Their captains, who have lost contact with them, are worried sick with their disappearances, until they suddenly return a day later. Rangiku and Nanao were gone only a few hours and came back directly, which concludes that the time in the Dangai is out of sync with the Soul Society. Mayuri Kurotsuchi conducts a survey of the area, with Kenpachi Zaraki assisting as a security escort. Meanwhile, while Ichigo Kurosaki and Rukia Kuchiki go off to handle hollows, Kon leaves to investigate a spiritual disturbance and finds a green-haired girl lying asleep and covered in rags. Ichigo returns home and becomes furious with Kon, who has brought back the green-haired girl. While the survey is going on, Mayuri and Kenpachi are confronted by an intense light emerging from the walls of the Dangai. As Ichigo and Rukia return through the Dangai to the Soul Society, they are chased by the supposedly revived Kototsu. To save themselves, Ichigo uses his Bankai and carries Rukia all the way to the Soul Society, but falls to the ground due to the gradual loss of his powers. Ichigo then encounters Toshiro Hitsugaya and Byakuya Kuchiki, who place him under confinement. A mysterious scientist in a laboratory addresses what seems to be body doubles of Izuru, Kira, and Nanao. While Kon tries to keep the green-haired girl, whose name is Nozomi Kujo, a secret from Ichigo's family. Rukia sneaks in Ichigo's jail cell and frees him. Jushiro Ukitake and Shunsui Kyoraku discuss about Ichigo's possible involvement with the disappearances, since his substitute badge was found by Byakuya inside the Dangai. While Rukia explains to Ichigo there is a time gap between the human world and the Soul Society, they are then confronted by Renji Abarai and Ikkaku Madarame, who exhibit ruthless behaviors unlike themselves. Yoruichi Shihoin arrives and seals Renji and Ikkaku before escaping with Ichigo and Rukia into her hideout. She explains to them that Renji and Ikkaku were secretly replaced by Reigai, artificial bodies which allows modified souls to maintain a physical form in Soul Society. The Reigai, which closely imitate the features of a Soul Reaper, are being used to test out soul candies, which means someone in the 12th Division is involved. Ichigo and Rukia later sneak into the laboratory and discover that Nozomi is a fugitive from the Soul Society. The mysterious scientist, along with Kira and Nanao's Reigai, arrive in the human world to apprehend Nozomi, who evades capture. Kon follows her and both are eventually cornered by the scientist. However, Uryu Ishida arrives to help the two. Uryu confronts the mysterious scientist while Ichigo, Rukia, and Yoruichi plan their escape from the Soul Society, assuming that several Reigai have blocked the Senkaimon, the gateway to the Dangai. Uryu is defeated by the scientist's Shikai of his Zanpakutō, Raikou. Yoruichi fights the Reigai to let Ichigo and Rukia escape. Ichigo and Rukia arrive to stop the scientist, revealed to be Kageroza Inaba, who easily deals with Ichigo in his weakening state. Just as he is about to kill Ichigo and Rukia, the other captains and lieutenants involved in the incident arrive, retrieving Nozomi and forcing Inaba and the Reigai to retreat. Admitting that he is behind the Reigai incident, Inaba then claims that once he has Nozomi, he will be able to conquer the Soul Society and the world of the living. Inaba escapes to the Soul Society and meets with the Reigai. Ichigo, Kon, Orihime, Uryu, and Chad are all in Kisuke Urahara's shop, looking after Nozomi. Rukia appears and tells Ichigo to join the Soul Reapers in his room to formulate a strategy on Nozomi's protection. Orihime organizes a barbecue to cheer up Nozomi and get her to open up to the others, however she runs away. A very concerned Kon eventually finds her, later leaving her in the care of Rangiku, but fails to realize that Rangiku is the imposter trying to capture Nozomi. After he realizes that Nozomi was captured by Rangiku, he attempts to save her. However, he cannot defeat Rangiku's Reigai, and after he himself is defeated, Ichigo, Rukia, Renji, and Rangiku all arrive to save Nozomi, and Rangiku's Reigai escapes. During the barbecue, Nozomi starts to eat after Kon offers her some of the barbecued food. Ukitake and Kyoraku, suspecting some sort of foul play in the Soul Society, recall on their previous mandatory captains meeting, where Mayuri claims and Kenpachi agrees that Ichigo tampered with his work in the Dangai. Unbeknownst to Ukitake and Kyoraku, both Mayuri and Kenpachi were actually the imposters. Meanwhile, in Karakura Town, Ichigo finds Kon tied up in his closet, which means Nozomi has escaped again. Ichigo and his friends proceed to search for her. Kon manages to find her in a forest, though she runs away again. Elsewhere in the forest, Ikkaku, Yumichika Ayasegawa, Shuhei Hisagi, and Marechio Omaeda are confronted by their respective Reigai. While Hisagi and Omaeda trick their imposters and defeat them, things do not go well for Ikkaku and Yumichika. Luckily, their Reigai are fended off after Uryu arrives to join the fray. Kira's Reigai approaches Rangiku. Rukia encounters her own Reigai, and Sui Feng arrests Kyoraku, who has been framed by Inaba. Kon continues to follow Nozomi, who claims to have some sort of uncertain destination to find. Rangiku, blocking the attacks of Kira's Reigai, is surprised when her Zanpakutō drops to the ground, since his new and improved Zanpakutō can increase the weight of whatever he strikes up to 10 times the amount. However, Rangiku, now subdued, cleverly blocks his Zanpakutō with a heavy steel pole, trapping it onto the ground, allowing her to defeat him. Ukitake, pleading to Central 46 to release Kyoraku, is denied his request, and he later meets with Retsu Unohana, who warns him to be careful. Rukia's Reigai is soon joined with Nemu Kuratsuchi's Reigai to brawl against Rukia, but Nemu arrives and kills her Reigai, which leaves behind a red stone, assuming this is true form of the Reigai. Elsewhere, Nozomi tells Kon she must find a place with a row of shrine gates, and Kon agrees to take her to the first place he remembers. Rukia, who defeats her Reigai, joins Nemu and Rangiku to search for Nozomi, but Rukia is revealed to actually be the fake Rukia, who then tosses Nemu and Rangiku into the river with the real Rukia. Ukitake is slashed by Kyoraku when freeing him from imprisonment, revealing this Kyoraku to also be a Reigai. Orihime and Chad find Rukia, Nemu, and Rangiku washed up on the shore of the river. As Orihime goes to heal them, Chad is attacked by Renji's Reigai. In the Soul Society, Ukitake and Kyoraku's Reigai confront Yamamoto, who claims he has known all along about their intent to kill him. Unohana meets with Issane Kotetsu and explains to her that she has gone through secret archives of the Soul Society and has determined Inaba as the perpetrator. Inaba then reveals himself and demonstrates the power of his Zanpakutō as Issane attacks him. As Chad is confronting the false Renji, the real Renji appears and attacks his imposter, both eventually defeating the Reigai. Meanwhile, Nozomi explains to Kon that the human world has several natural Senkaimon, some leading to empty voids. Her plan is to enter one and vanish. The Reigai of Rukia, Rangiku, Ikkaku, Yumichika, Hisagi, and Omaeda appear to apprehend her, but they are confronted by Ichigo, who unleashes a powerful Getsuga Tensho, destroying them all. Hitsugaya, Byakuya, Kenpachi, Yachiru Kusajishi, and Sajin Komamura, the 5 Soul Reapers trapped in the living world, use Urahara's Senkaimon to return to the Soul Society. They fall into Inaba's trap in the Dangai, where Komamura stays behind to counter the Koryu, the restrictive current passing through the Dangai. Kenpachi encounters his false counterpart and engages in fierce combat. At first being defeated, he then regains the upper hand and destroys his Reigai after encouragement from Yachiru. Meanwhile, Ukitake and Kyoraku's Reigai continue their battle with Yamamoto, claiming that they have not lost their pride despite being Reigai. Also, Unohana and Issane confront Inaba at his headquarters, where he explains how he created these Reigai. Issane suddenly turns on Unohana, revealing herself to be an imposter. Unohana's Reigai then arrives and meets with her original. Unohana and her imposter engage in conflict using Kido attacks, with Unohana escaping. Ukitake and Kyoraku's Reigai are unable to defeat Yamamoto, who criticizes their claim that they retain their pride. Unohana's Reigai arrives and heals their wounds, revealing their strategy was to exhaust Yamamoto. Elsewhere in the Seireitei, Byakuya is stopped by the Hitsugaya's Reigai, and the two unleash their Bankai in a brief battle. Byakuya asks why someone would fight for Inaba, and Hitsugaya's Reigai claims that he wants to protect someone, whom the original does not have the power to do so. Byakuya criticizes his motives and eventually manages to defeat him, though narrowly escaping Hitsugaya's Hyoten Hayakuso. Back in the living world, Ichigo asks Urahara to send him to the Soul Society. He is advised not to go due to his declining spiritual energy. However, Nozomi steps up and reveals a type of healing Kido that restores some of Ichigo's lost spiritual energy. He then proceeds with heading to the Soul Society, where Inaba meets with the unresponsive figure resembling Nozomi, claiming Nozomi will return. Ichigo, entering through the Dangai, reaches the Soul Society, where he later encounters Inaba. After Byakuya kills the fake Hitsugaya, he moves forward, where he encounters his own Reigai. While in a bamboo forest, Kenpachi is attacked by Sui Feng's Reigai, but he easily defeats her squad members. Hitsugaya is confronted by fake Momo Hinamori, but he cannot being himself to kill her. The real Momo seems to appear and attacks her Reigai, but both are revealed to be Reigai after tricking him into saving one of them, and they cut him down. Yoruichi then appears and defeats both of the Reigai, saving Hitsugaya. Inaba, while attacking Ichigo, explains that his lack of purity makes him an erasable anomaly. Byakuya confronts his false counterpart, originally struggling until he releases his Bankai. Meanwhile, Komamura is having difficulty dealing with Sui Feng's Reigai, whose speed and abilities seem to outmatch his. In a desperate final attempt, both of them clash with their Bankai, and the battle ends in a draw. Elsewhere, a frustrated Yamamoto releases a powerful wall of fire, seemingly engulfing the imposters that were challenging him. In the world of the living, Ichigo's friends express concern when Urahara tells them he cannot detect Ichigo's spiritual pressure. Hitsugaya and Kenpachi arrive at Inaba's base of operations. They engage him in combat, and Inaba reveals his Zanpakutō can record attacks in the Dangai and fire them back at the opponent. As Inaba gains the upper hand, Yoruichi and the captains arrive, aside from Komamura, Unohana, Yamamoto, and Mayuri. Elsewhere, Ichigo is rescued in the Dangai by a mysterious figure. Inaba summons the remaining Reigai, and a brawl between the originals and the fakes ensues. At first, Yoruichi and the captains are able to overpower Inaba and his forces. However, when they lose the upper hand, a seemingly false Mayuri slashes Inaba, revealing he switched places with the imposter. Ichigo awakens at the Urahara shop, mystified as to how he was rescued. Urahara tells him that there are several ways to escape the Koryu but none to escape the Kototsu, so it is unknown how Ichigo escaped. Elsewhere, Mayuri uses his Zanpakutō to drug Inaba, which slows down his ability to think. However, Inaba then summons Issein's Reigai and attacks her. At the Urahara shop, Rukia then explains Project Spearhead to the rest of the group, in which modified souls were used. Inaba then takes the soul candy from the Reigai and swallows it, resulting with Inaba being rejected from his body and the Reigai taking the effects of the drug. Inaba, revealing his backstory as the one who created modified souls, then resurrects most of the defeated Reigai, unleashing their true strength. Nozomi admits she was the first modified soul. Renji reports to Yamamoto and informs him that the captains involved in the brawl with Inaba have not been heard from. Yamamoto then states that only Ichigo, Rukia, Renji, Ikkaku, and Yumachika are prepared for battle. Yamamoto then speculates several hollows may have gathered due to the spiritual disturbance. Nozomi stays at Ichigo's house for the time being, and Kon has been feeling really depressed lately because of what Nozomi admitted. That night, while Ichigo is sleeping, Nozomi leaves the house and goes for a walk. However, she is then attacked by a hollow, and a confident Kon arrives to defend her. After the hollow easily deals with them both, Nozomi's frustration releases a bout of spiritual pressure, and she regains her Soul Reaper abilities, defeating the hollow. After regaining Soul Reaper abilities, Nozomi decides that she wants to help defeat Inaba, but she has yet to remember the name and power of her Zanpakutō. Ichigo, Rukia, Uryu, and Chad decide to help Nozomi awaken her dormant powers through the same rigorous training that Ichigo underwent to awaken his. Meanwhile, Inaba orders the fakes of Byakuya, Hitsugaya, Kenpachi, and Komamura to infiltrate the human world, but the four fall into a trap set by Urahara, who separates them during their travel through the Dangai. When the four fakes arrive in various areas, Ikkaku battles Kenpachi's Reigai, while some of the lieutenants deal with the rest. Taking advice from Yumichika to not hold back on her training, Ichigo throws a Getsuga Tensho at Nozomi, allowing her to finally remember the name of her Zanpakutō, Arazome Shigure. Ikkaku looks like he is about to be delivered the finishing blow by Kenpachi's Reigai, but Nozomi arrives and seemingly obliterates Kenpachi's Reigai with her Zanpakutō. Hisagi and Kira take on Hitsugaya's Reigai, while Rangiku and Tetsuzaimon Iba fight Komamura's Reigai. Renji and Rukia face Byakuya's Reigai. When Kenpachi's Reigai reappears to fight Nozomi, Yumichika faces him to avenge his fallen comrade, while Ichigo and Nozomi tend to Ikkaku's wounds. An unsatisfied Nozomi wants to help out in the ongoing battles, but all of the lieutenants tell her to get out of the way and go to safety. The lieutenants are at their limits against the four false captains. Kenpachi challenges Ichigo to a match, but when Hitsugaya eagerly joins in and attacks Nozomi, she then deals a considerable amount of damage to him in one shot. Byakuya's Reigai, realizing the power of her Zanpakutō, tries to bind her to keep her from using it, but Uryu manages to save her. After witnessing Nozomi absorb an attack from his bow, Jinrei Kojaku, Uryu deduces that her Zanpakutō can absorb anything with spiritual pressure. Having no other choice but to rely on her, Ichigo, Uryu, Chad, and the remaining lieutenants all direct their spiritual pressure at Nozomi, which she redirects at the four false captains. Yamamoto believes Nozomi is unimportant to him due to the fact that she is a modified soul. Ukitake and Kyoraku's Reigai suddenly appear in the living world and are back for a rematch with Yamamoto, but Ichigo and Nozomi take over for now and spar with the two. Ichigo later has to cover for Nozomi when she is defeated. Yamamoto, distracted at this, is soon immobilized by the Unohara's Reigai, but as the original Unohara stops her, he is able to break the seal with his spiritual pressure. When Yamamoto is about to be attacked by the three Reigai, Inaba arrives and commands them to stop, as he wants to be the one to battle Yamamoto. Nozomi offers to be a decoy to prevent Inaba from copying Yamamoto's techniques. Inaba avoids crossing swords with Nozomi, knowing full well of her abilities, but Nozomi pulls out a surprise attack, having already absorbed Yamamoto's spiritual pressure. Yamamoto attacks Inaba with his flames, as this was a diversion for Ichigo to use his Getsuga Tensho on Inaba. Inaba, revealed to still be alive, was able to copy the abilities of Nozomi, absorbing both Yamamoto and Ichigo's attacks. As Inaba then uses this to finish Yamamoto off, Nozomi appears before the blast in an attempt to absorb the attack. Nozomi's Zanpakutō breaks in the midst of trying to protect Yamamoto from Inaba's attack. Ichigo and Kon try to save Nozomi from being taken away, but Inaba reveals that he and Nozomi were created by the same spirit particles of another Soul Reaper. He defeats Ichigo, Rukia, and Renji, while Nozomi manages to run away with Kon in tow. Nozomi sadly binds Kon to a rock, running away without him. When Inaba finds Nozomi, he falls due to a loose rock on a slope. Ichigo finally catches up and defeats Inaba with a Getsuga Tensho, only to discover that it was a clone that Inaba created. Inaba knocks Ichigo out in one swipe, passes Nozomi out, and proceeds to leave the world of the living with her. Following his defeat by Inaba, Ichigo has lost his Soul Reaper powers. Still determined to save Nozomi, Ichigo and his friends gather at the Urahara shop to come up with a rescue plan. Urahara comes up with a risky plan that involves Ichigo going in the Dangai and being swallowed by the Kototsu to retrieve a sample of his Soul Reaper powers. The plan works, and Ichigo gets out of the Kototsu. When he meets up with everyone, he states that he saw another one of himself when he was inside the Kototsu, leading Urahara to conclude that Ichigo saved himself when he was first swallowed, since there is no time in the Kototsu. Inside the Dangai, Rukia and the others act as decoys to draw away the attention of the Reigai, while Ichigo, Urahara, and Kon break into the Seireitei. As they search for Inaba's laboratory, Urahara makes an attempt to restore Ichigo's lost powers by creating a soul candy, but is discovered by Nanao and Nemu's Reigai. At the last minute before an explosion, Ichigo breaks the glass containing the soul candy and consumes it. However, as stated by Urahara, the candy was incomplete, making both his Soul Reaper and Hollow powers unbalanced. While escaping, the three are ambushed by the false captains, but are saved when Yoruichi and the originals appear, ready to fight. The captains, thought to have fallen in battle, return to fight the Reigai. Meanwhile, Ichigo powers continue to grow unstable, forcing him to rest for the time being. Urahara and Kon later find out about Oko Yushima, the Soul Reaper who extracted all of his spirit particles and separating them into two modified souls, them being Nozomi and Inaba. When visiting Yushima's cell in the nest of maggots, they get attacked by Suifeng and Omaida's Reigai, but are later defeated by Urahara. The two visit Yushima's cell, only to find him unresponsive, leading Urahara to conclude that Yushima will never gain consciousness. Meanwhile, Ichigo's hollowified form finally takes over and escapes the building he was in. Urahara and Kon head to the location where Inaba's other laboratory might be, only to be halted by Urahara's Reigai. As Urahara battles his counterpart, Kon dashes down into the laboratory, where he promptly tries to awaken Nozomi inside her capsule. She does awaken and insists that Kon escape at first, but after seeing his persistence and his devotion of trying to save her, she tries to help Kon restore Ichigo's spiritual energy. Before Ichigo's soul candy can be created, Nemu's Reigai appears and stops the transfer. Immediately afterwards, the fusion process between Nozomi and Inaba is completed. Ichigo's hollowified form defeats the 8th Division members, but when he is about to destroy Nanao's Reigai, the fused Yushima appears before him. Yushima, showing no interest in fighting Ichigo's hollowified form, tries to walk away, but the mindless hollowified creature continues to pursue him, leading them both to clash on Sokyoku Hill. The captains and their Reigai counterparts are finally joined by their lieutenants who help them in the battle. Rukia, Renji, Orihime, Uryu, and Chad arrive on Sokyoku Hill and all try to stop Yushima, but the combined powers of Nozomi and Inaba prove to be too much for them. Yushima reveals the true nature of his Zanpakutō, Sumitsukigasa, and defeats everyone, but before he can finish them off, Ichigo jumps in front of Rukia to take an attack. When Yushima stabs Ichigo with his Zanpakutō, Ichigo goes into Yushima's consciousness and sees an image of Nozomi, who calls out for him, causing his hollowified form to break apart and losing all his powers again. Ichigo is left to watch as his friends attempt to overpower Yushima, but Yushima finds a way to break through whatever they try to attack him with. Yushima has Nemu's Reigai bring him more fusion stabilizer, but when she arrives, she unexpectedly kicks him backward. It is revealed that Kon was helped by Urahara and Mayuri by placing his soul candy into that of Nemu's Reigai. Kon gives Ichigo a complete soul candy, which restores his powers. He prepares to unleash his Bankai against Yushima. Meanwhile, Byakuya has deduced that the Reigai do not sacrifice themselves to attack the originals when they are all together, as it goes against what they believe in. The originals join forces against the Reigai to protect the Soul Society. Ichigo successfully unleashes his Bankai and fights against Yushima. With the assistance of his friends, Ichigo is able to fire a hollow-fied Getsuga Tensho, which Yushima is unable to absorb because of his inability to absorb Hollow's spiritual pressure. As Yushima strikes at Ichigo, he catches his Zanpakutō and fires a huge hollow-fied Getsuga Tensho. Nozomi's consciousness appears for a moment and asks to be killed, but Yushima takes complete control and unleashes a giant structure that absorbs the spirit particles from the Soul Society. Being surrounded by his structure and Ichigo out of the way, Nozomi regains control and creates a sword to slice Yushima's Saketsu. The Reigai react shockingly to Yushima's attack and reveal that their motive was to protect the Soul Society in their own way. The Reigai proceed to attack the structure at the cost of their own lives, causing a huge explosion. Ichigo deactivates his Bankai and has one last clash with an enraged Yushima before breaking the fusion. Nozomi and Inaba reappear once again, and Inaba begins to question his thoughts to Nozomi before fading away. Nozomi says a heartwarming goodbye to Kon and fades away. Ichigo has been struggling against Hollows due to gradually losing his temporarily restored powers, but is saved by Rukia and Uryu, who tell him to rest from dealing with Hollows. It is shown that Ukitake contacted Rukia to prevent Ichigo from fighting Hollows. The next day, Ichigo takes Rukia to an ice skating rink with their friends. At night, fireworks from a nearby amusement park begin to shoot up in the sky, ending the day on a happy note. A massive hollow is sensed nearby when Ichigo and Rukia are heading home, but Rukia tries to save Ichigo from facing it, telling him that she would fight in his place if she has to, seeing him as a good friend. An exhausted Ichigo was well aware that Rukia was instructed to prevent Ichigo from fighting hollows and to give him rest, but he knows that he will remain the same way as he has been before. Ichigo wakes up in his room, surrounded by his friends. He goes outside and takes note of his disappearing powers, unable to sense spirits anymore.